Let's take a short break with a homegrown uplifting track. This is Be Who You Wanna Be from Newcastle band Never Say Never Music.
Be who you wanna be.
This is for the struggle. This is for the hustle.
Be who you wanna be.
This is for the struggle. Come on, use that muscle.
Check out Be Who You Wanna Be and more from Never Say Never Music on your favourite streaming platform or visit neversaynevermusic.com.
Bring it back.
Towards Understanding with Clayton Bielen values being a positive radio program for everyone. As we present today's episode, please accept this little ears warning. Some of the themes discussed may not be suitable for children.
This is Towards Understanding. You're with Clayton Bielen, and as the name of the program does suggest, our whole thought and idea of bringing this program to you is how do we actually ensure that as we hear people's stories, we head towards a better understanding of some part of our world. It might be the way we can act in the world. It might be something about God. It might be understanding someone else's situation we've never thought of before. And, you know, I think sort of all three of those might be appropriate for our conversation today with the author of the book Unfailing Love, the byline, Freedom from Abuse, Shame and Control of a Schizophrenic Spouse. Georgia Morris joins us. G'day, Georgia.
G'day, hello.
It's wonderful to have a chat to you on the other side of the world. It's fantastic. We always love to be able to, through modern technology nowadays, we can chat anywhere, anytime. And so it is wonderful to have a chat to you. Georgia, we do need to say, I suppose, as we start our conversation that, and often we do mention this on the program as well, sometimes we've got to talk about the dark parts of life to understand the light and the influence that God is having. And so that's true of your story as well. So just in case there is any little ears listening at the moment, we're going to cover off a few heavy topics, especially in the start of this conversation. Georgia, let's get stuck into that. And your story really does go back a number of decades now. So let's actually head back maybe to even as you were growing up and through your teen years, and you experienced some things that people really should never have to experience. Could you just give us a bit of a flavour of what life was like growing up and then some of those instances that occurred?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I was raised in the middle of 10. We had 10 in our family, Catholic family. My parents really encouraged loving the Lord, and we prayed together as a family. We just had a really good experience being raised. We loved each other very, very much. Did lots of things together. And then teenage years became a struggle because I was, like I said, the middle of 8 children. My mom kind of took a dive with, she had a little bit of, not a huge problem with alcohol, but started to drink wine during the days and got tired of taking care of kids. And so at, age 16, 17, I would hear a lot, take the baby. My youngest sister's 9 years younger than me, my brother 8 years younger, and I have another sibling a few years younger, but I just felt like I was doing things that mom should have been doing, and at one point I just stood up against that. I just said no to her one time. No, I don't want to, I'm not going to take them. Sorry, but this is what you should be doing, Mom. And I was the kind of, quiet middle child that did everything. I wanted to please my parents, do everything right. And then, that was standing up to her. She's pretty explosive sometimes. In that situation, it actually turned out good. I got in my car without the kids and went around the corner, just trying to cool down myself because I couldn't believe what I anyway, went back to the house, and that was actually the time my mom she just said, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. What can I do to change? I need to change. And she knelt down and asked me to pray with her. And she changed after that, which was really heartwarming to me. I didn't expect that, but anyway, going along, living on my own. I moved out at 18, and then worked for my dad, who was an architect, and then that was amazing. And then I was asked to work for a dental lab, and that's when things really crashed. I was excited to work at a dental lab to learn how to make gold teeth and dentures and all that, but long story short, I was sexually abused, and really, he was a married man with 2 teenagers, and I tell a little more detail in the book, but that was a situation that was really hard to get out of, and I did. When I did, he stalked me when I lived with 2 other young women. We had my grandma's house that we were living in, all going to college, but that was really rough to get out of that situation.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna stop on that.
Yeah.
But
yeah. And again, we don't have to. We certainly don't have to go and tell all the details either of that. And I think but you're painting this picture of these. And I think this is a lot of your story, as you certainly read in the book Unfailing Love, that I think there is these sort of 2 parts of your world that are constantly sort of there and are functioning, and then which part is almost going to win in a sense. These parts of world where things are tough and dark and people are doing terrible things, and then this other aspect of God's goodness and grace, and we're going to hear that that part does actually win out in the end. So let's continue on that journey though. So even though this was a time where you were sexually abused, this was not the only time that this occurred either. As it went forward in the next few years or so, you sadly experienced other things like this.
And I'll go to the positive part of that, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Unless you want me to.
No, of course.
So not understanding myself why things were happening, because I thought I was, I gave my heart to the Lord. I at 18 was on a worship team, and things were going better after that situation. So I made a retreat, just a quiet retreat that we went on, or I went on personally, and it was a Catholic retreat. And the priest at one point said, "Just go back to your units and take 2 or 3 hours and bring something back that you want to offer to the Lord." And so this was at the point right after that abusive employer. I just said, I just sat and listened. I just was like, I don't know, Lord. I don't know. And then I looked down from the deck I was on, beautiful sunny day with grassy field in front of me with these wildflowers, just a beautiful scene. And I thought, that's it. The joy that I'm getting from these flowers and this scene, I want to be your little flower. I want to bring you joy, Jesus, that you're giving me right now. I want my life to bring you joy. So I ran down in the field, picked a flower, wrote a poem, because I'm a songwriter, and just wrote this poem out and took it back, left it on the altar, and the title of it was My Little Flower. I don't remember what I wrote, but it was along that line, that please, take me back, because I felt like I had blown it so many times. That's what I felt, even in these situations. If it wasn't my initiation, I felt the shame. I felt like this dark cloud that I can never get out of, and I wanted to be pure. And so I left it, and then 1 year later, never told a soul. I never told anybody. And 1 year later, almost to the day, I was at my brother-in-law and sister's home with 2 other people, and my brother-in-law said, does anybody want prayer before we leave? And I was like, yeah, sure, I do. could always use prayer. I mean, and so people, they kind of got me in a chair and laid hands on me, that kind of thing. Well, everybody was quiet, and my brother-in-law said, Georgia, I don't know what this means, but I cannot stop hearing in my mind, my little flower, my little flower. I see like a vision of a father holding a little girl, and he's saying, my little flower. So that just took my breath away. It was like, wow, I knew deep down, God is so good. He's real. You get these doubts that, is he really real? Even though I had faith, but this was like an exclamation point. I was so enthused and just so excited.
So here you are, you're in this situation where you're sensing and you're understanding God. And I think this is like that, as we mentioned, this is sort of this remarkable, it's not quite a dichotomy because they're working at the same time, these stories of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so here you are, you know that God is always present. These aspects happen. You've had these experiences which no one should go through. And as we mentioned, there's other times where you'd been abused as well. And you find yourself in a situation, in a marriage, which is essentially the byline of your book, which was freedom from abuse, shame, and control of a schizophrenic spouse. So here you were in a marriage, and then suddenly having to realize, hold on, this is perhaps not what I was expecting in this marriage. Could you talk us through what was occurring there, and I suppose then what you had to go through?
Thank you. That's really helpful, because that's the next stage, really. It was that very night that one of the people in that little group that prayed was who I call Mark in the book. He said, he came to the house and said, I heard you are to be my wife. Okay, I won't go too much in that, but I explained all that situation, that it was like, no, this is not right. I fought it in every way, but eventually I started to take heed that maybe I don't want to, God is bringing him to me, or maybe I don't want to be closed-hearted. He was 11 years older than me, and he had a job, a business, and he seemed stable. He was Christian, but in that, all that was he. Let me just say, in short, we were married 7 years, and it started seeming okay, and then actually on our honeymoon, he had shown signs of mental illness that I just didn't put it as that. I didn't know, but I didn't know him very well. That's another thing that, you should really know who you're going to commit to. Yeah. And I didn't. I was 21. But there was one, well, I don't know how much to say, but
it's all right.
I did have experience. I'll say it went from bad to really bad to worse, to where I was calling mental health every 2 to 3 months. And at the time, I was considered he was an involuntary patient, and I was the one responsible to call them. I was told to call them, because he's not going to call on his own. And he was in and out of mental institutions or the hospital for over the period of probably the second year that we were married till the end, which was 7 years total that we were married, which I almost called the book 7 Years of Hell, because it was like a prison living there. I have 2 sons from him that I went through. I was pregnant right away, and so at the time that he did things like push me down and laugh, when I'm 8 months pregnant, and I had suicidal thoughts, which I'd never had in my life at one point, and I knew that was a spiritual battle for my soul, and I was like, no, I'm not going to. I was walking across the bridge, actually. It's like, no, that's not going to happen for this little baby. I mean, I was so thankful. My first son is Jeremy, and he was a gift from the Lord that saved my life, really, because, I mean, being pregnant, it was like my mind could be nurturing my son. And I decided then, no matter what happened, I wasn't about to leave him, because growing, I mean, I made the vow to him as well, and I just was determined to stay in this marriage, which, you know, when there's abuse, now looking back, I would not recommend, I wouldn't recommend it. You know, if there's children, especially, it doesn't, I don't know. I can't give advice, but I know looking back, I wish I would have left sooner, but although God he had his journey plan. I mean, he was showing himself all the time in miracle ways. So there was one scripture that I memorized, and this one came back so many times to me, and it's greater is he. It's First John 4:4. Greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. And there was literally a time when mental health was visiting, saying, go get his things. And he followed me in the bedroom, which I skipped a lot that I'm to tell in the book, but he stood in one place, like a catatonic state almost, in one place in the living room for 4 years. And I'm not exaggerating. He might go into the bathroom and come back. He'd come back to that same spot. He would not eat for a long time. I tried to feed him, and he'd dribble it down his face and then laugh at me. And, you know, it was definitely, I felt like more of a nurse than a wife, and a mother to my children. I have another son, but they're only a year apart. So when they said to go get his clothes, he pushed me up against the wall. They didn't know, but he was trying to strangle me. And that point, I thought of that scripture, and I know the Holy Spirit brought it to my mind, because everything was happening, where it just came really quickly. And I looked him in the eye, and I didn't say it, but I thought it, and it just penetrated. I looked him right in the eye. He was trying to strangle me with everything. He was purple almost in his face. And I just said it, and I'll tell you, it was like a wall. And this was not the first time, but a great wall between us. And I felt like a waterfall of peace just come over me, to where it was like, you cannot hurt me. I mean, it was beyond my own strength. It was definitely the Lord protecting and showing his, once again, like his real power that is there in our weakness.
Absolutely. We're going to be back in just a couple of minutes' time with Georgia Morris, the author of the book Unfailing Love, Freedom from Abuse, Shame and Control of a Schizophrenic Spouse. We're going to hear about the journey of forgiveness, the journey of trust again, and some of the remarkable things that Georgia has learnt about God and her own situation. So we've had to, as we said, look at some of the darker parts of Georgia's story. We're going to start looking at those lighter parts on the way next here on Towards Understanding.
Share your brand, your event, your message.
Across 90 Christian radio stations and major cities in Australia and New Zealand.
By sponsoring Towards Understanding, hosted by Clayton Bielen.
More than 210,000 people tune into Towards Understanding each week. And with just one sponsorship, you'll reach this immense engaged audience. Find out more about this exciting and unique opportunity now
on the sponsorship page at positivemedia.com.au.
Georgia, let's talk about, I suppose, as we sort of look then past this perspective. You had a couple of kids as well, and then what is, you look back now, and it's many, many years now that you're looking back at that story, that part of your story. What are the things that you have actually learnt about God and had to walk in to learn about God? I'm imagining forgiveness would be one of those.
Definitely. Well, I realized even during the time that I thought I'd never get out of this prison that I had hurt a lot of people. I wasn't. I was not listening to my parents, who my dad had warned me and really advised me not to marry him, and I really wanted the blessing of my dad, but I just was so strong-headed that I was like, no, I'm not going to listen to him. Well, that was one. He was one that, as soon as I realized, it got to the point where Mark wouldn't even allow me to feed the kids. I mean, it got that bad, and I couldn't go to work. We had no money. I had to sell this snowmobile motorcycle shop that he had. It sat empty for a year, and he was very angry that I sold it, but we didn't have any income. So I had no reaction from him until he heard me say to the mental health people, I sold it. And anyway, that all said, I realized I have to leave him. This is ridiculous. My kids come first. And so the first person I called was my dad. And they lived, my parents, we were a close family. They lived maybe 2 miles away. And I could not see them. Every time for 6 years, I could not have anything to do with them. That was what Mark stipulated. Either, it's either me or them. You can't have your family anymore. So none of my family was, I even had to, if I saw them in a store, I have to switch to a different lane. And anyway, I called my dad and asked if I could meet with him. And of course, right away, we met that day. And he was the first person. I was like, Dad, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. And, he was just, we were both in tears. And he said, okay, we need to go to a lawyer. I have a friend. So we went right that day or the next day. And I thought, no, I'm just going to do a legal separation. Well, then he pointed out to me that I would be responsible for him the rest of his life, financially, everything. So I went ahead to agree on the divorce. And the thing is, I've since, this is like 40 some years ago, I have since forgiven Mark, and it's been in a progression. I have been remarried for 35 years, and it's to Wes, and I talk about him too. We have 2 more children, so we've raised 4 kids together. The neat thing is, I didn't feel like I could ever remarry because of all the shame and everything. But little did I know, I was in a church, which if you have a church community, that is something that he allowed me to do. And I'm so thankful that I had those people in my life at the time, because we were continually prayed for, and I had the support. But Wes, my husband now, it was one of the single guys. He and another guy named Clark, they would come and take the boys when I was planning to call mental health. They would take them to a park or take them, snowboard, whatever, sledding. And that, the kids were only maybe 2 or 3, I think, more like 3 to 4, and then onward over the years. And so that was my support. And then even so I ended up marrying Wes, and this is, I'm talking about years over a few minutes, and that's hard to do. But the thing is, I've had to actually sometimes realize that some of the triggers or things that are in my marriage with Wes, I had to sort out. Now, is this something I haven't forgiven from Mark, or is it Wes? Because so we actually went a couple times through counseling ourselves, and it wasn't always. I always had to. Oh, it's me again, And I realized no. I mean, I'm married to someone brand new. I'm not going to have that. I'm not going to transfer anything I went through and put it on him. That he's the same way, Mark. He's not, But although we're all humans, so
Yeah.
there's not a perfect person. But
No,
I've grown to forgive, and now I've been able to go and visit Mark actually in my old home tower. He is in a group home, and I've be able to. Wes and I together he calls a lot, and he says he prays for everybody. He's a changed person now. He's in a home and he takes meds. I mean, he actually had a real problem that was never followed up with anything. He'd get out of the mental institution, and then I'd have to pick him up, and he'd not take anything. We had no follow up, and now there's more support that way. Since the early 80s, there wasn't any. And now there's NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness. And there's a lot of support groups for families that are going through similar situations, which I also mentioned in the book because I did my own study on schizophrenia as I was writing my book last year. And I realize now that some of the things that I thought he was faking was really an illness, and it's typical of people with schizophrenia, which I never knew. Yeah. I just learned as I saw it, So
Georgia,
it's scary. It's a scary thing.
Yeah, these are the two areas I think I want us to sort of spend our time as we have our last minutes of us being able to have this conversation, and it is exactly around this, which is what you're talking about. And I think the two questions I suppose I want to ask you is, it's sort of the two sides of a coin. For those who may be realizing that they are living right now with somebody who has a pretty serious mental illness, as you said, even the last 30 or 40 years, it's improved tremendously. The understanding and the support services, that's certainly the case here in Australia and New Zealand as well. So one question I want to ask you is around that, and then I'm going to ask you the flip question, which is, for somebody like yourself who's had to live with someone with that, what's the best things to sort through? So let's just start with the first question. For somebody who may be right now in the middle of that, and perhaps they're sort of feeling like they're in that journey that you were in, and maybe they're struggling to understand, that they're wanting to support, but they're in a situation that is not great for them either. What are the things that you would be encouraging them to think about, to do, to who should they be speaking to, those sorts of aspects?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is I was trying to fix him and realizing only God can fix someone. As much as you care about them, you have to release them. And whether you have a spiritual connection with the Lord or not, with God, as a human to human, I tried everything to try to change him, and I couldn't do it. It just made me I almost lost my own life over it. Even my doctor said, your kids aren't going to have a mom. They don't have a dad now as it is. You have to leave him. And so, I think that's really there's a lot of bipolar, there's alcoholism, there's, so many different phases of it, but of abuse that can come. And if it's happening, you really need to talk to someone you trust, and don't try to handle it yourself, because what happens is you can't get out of a pit. You become more abused, I believe, if you can't come out to the light to someone, because it's a spiritual battle. It's the way I saw it. I was a Christian and I did have the Bible, I went in the bathroom and locked the door. When for me, that was, I gained support and strength, reading the Psalms and whatnot. But I honestly, I can't imagine not having God in my life. But there are people that are trying to take it on themselves, and I would encourage them to not try. I don't know if that's along the line that you're.
Yeah,
that's just what comes to my heart.
Yeah. Well, I think there's always a strength in you. Certainly over the years, I've interviewed a lot of people who will say that, personally just keeping to trying and trying to solve it myself won't make that happen. You do need to rely on God. We need to make great choices and those sorts of things, but He's the one that has to do that difference. Can we ask the other perspective of it, which is more where you're sitting right now, Georgia, as well, which is this idea of somebody who has lived through something of pretty big consequence, and it may be that they've lived with a spouse who's had a serious mental health condition that caused great grief to them. It might be other abuse. It might be sort of some terrible incident that has occurred in the past, and is needing to now look back and say, how do I live? How do I work through forgiveness? How do I work through living in my current situation? What would be your suggestion to somebody who's saying, look, I think I really need to be stepping into these spaces better now?
Well, I'm not a counselor, but counseling can really help with trauma. Also, prayer. I mean, there is, for me personally, I've had to dig deep sometimes to just realize I have to surrender all this, the hurt and the pain, because suffering is not something that automatically leaves. When it's been a prolonged time of trauma or suffering, it can be a very dark place. But I think personally for me, I have done a lot in my, like, to have the input that's coming into my soul, into my mind, is good things, and I mean, like, I just like suggest like an daily audio Bible. I'm a part of it. There's a group, where maybe I'm too tired to read or something, but you're filling yourself with uplifting spiritual things. And because the darkness is spiritual as well. And for me, it's just like breaking that darkness with good, overcoming evil, and being solid, being abiding in a place of abiding where you're building your faith in Jesus. I mean, I honestly, I live in Seattle now, but I've found, a few women prayer groups that I go. We're all from different parts of all over Seattle, but we have a common faith, and that's been a really good thing to get into a support group like that to pray, and friendship too as well. And I read my Bible.
Yeah, I love it. Mm-hmm. And I think what I've heard in your story too is that, it's the old little question of a kid who says, hey, I can't see Jesus, but I'd like him with skin on. This idea that there are people who are filling parts of that. We've heard those stories from, Wes in there, your dad as well, that it's about trying to find those people who will stand with you and support you as well. I think that's seemed to be a big part of that story. Mm-hmm. Georgia, we haven't even had a chance to mention the fact that, part of that story has been your love of music throughout your life. And again, during that first marriage, that was suppressed as well, not being able to do that. And now you actually teach music to so many, and that's a wonderful part of the real you being able to be freed in that, which is a celebration.
Exactly.
So although we don't get the chance to talk about it, I just wanted to at least mention it as well. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for writing this book, Unfailing Love, Freedom from Abuse, Shame, and Control of a Schizophrenic Spouse. We wish you all the best with the impact of this, and we say thank you so much for taking the time to have a chat to us on Towards Understanding today.
No, thank you, Clayton. I appreciate it.
Georgia Morris, my guest here on Towards Understanding.
Let's take a short break with a homegrown uplifting track. This is Be Who You Wanna Be from Newcastle band Never Say Never Music.
Be who you want.
the struggle. This is for the hustle.
Be who you wanna be.
This is for the struggle. Come on, use that muscle.
Check out Be Who You Wanna Be and more from Never Say Never Music on your favourite streaming platform or visit neversaynevermusic.com.
Bring it back.